Hey guys, in this video we'll be designing a piece of flat pack furniture, specifically a stool. Now in my country, plywood is usually either 22 or 19 millimeters thick, so we're going to be designing for wood that is 19 millimeters thick to be laser cut or machined to these specific sizes. So I'm going to start by designing the seat size of my stool, and that is going to be a 300 millimeter diameter circle. So we'll double check that guy. If we measure from here to here, that is 300 millimeters. Okay, so that is the top, or the size of the top of my chair. Now I want to step down and have the hidden joints inside of that. So I'm going to make a second circle that is about 20 millimeters smaller. So that's 280. So this will be where the wood joins on, and this is going to be the aesthetic part going upstairs. All right. So next up, I need to start designing or drawing my joints that go on the top of this. So I'm going to go ahead and draw, my wood is 19 mil thick. So I'm going to draw a joint that is 25 mil long and 19 millimeters high, or in this case, wide. I'm going to measure here. That gives me 19 millimeters and it's 25 mil long. I'm going to position this guy exactly on my quadrant over there. I should probably, my quadrant is on there. And I'm going to move that guy in 10 millimeters this way. Now I'm going to make a second copy. I'm going to say copy and move that way. Let's try 100 millimeters. 100 millimeters. Nah, it's too much. Let's do 60 millimeters. 60 millimeters. Yes, that'll do the trick. I think that'll be just dandy. All right, so this is the size of the shape I'm going to be working with, and I want to be able to support it this way just a smidge. So I'm going to go ahead and hide these, and I'm going to be working in my front viewport where I can see those two curves. So I'm going to start from this end that way. I'm going to go that way 25 millimeters just as a start. Next up, I'm going to be drawing from that end this way down 19 millimeters. That's the thickness of my wood. This way 25, up 19, across that way, down 19 again, across this way 25 millimeters, up that way. And now I might need my circle again. Now I'm going to draw it this way 10 millimeters. Now, if I remember correctly, and if I judged my sizes correctly, these will now fit in that. I'm going to say join, and I'm going to type in show to bring back my circle. And you'll see, yeah, I kind of guesstimated that just a little bit too wide. I'm going to bring that back 2 millimeters. I'm going to select that point over there and move that back 2 millimeters so that it doesn't extend past this inner circle. All right, so that would be the section of my design that needs to press inwards towards this guy. Now I'm going to go ahead and mirror that guy up over, because it's supposed to poke in, I'm supposed to have 2 joints up, not 3 joints up. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to mirror this guy from there to there and delete the old one, because I need these 2 joints to slot into these 2 holes over there. And you can see that over there. Now, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and grab these guys now and say polar array. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say polar array around the center of that. And I want 3 objects in my polar array. And to make my life a little bit easier, I'm selecting all of these guys just to get like a visual reference of what's going on. I'm going to grab all of these guys and I'm going to say extrude as a valid closed polysurface to there, 19 mil thick. And I'm just going to turn on my shading so you can see that was that section over there. Next up, I'll do the top section. And I'm going to extrude that guy as well. Ooh. I want to turn off my shading over there. I hit enter to redo the same operation, and I forgot the last thing I did was do shading. So I'm going to go ahead and say extrude up, type in 19 millimeters. So that would be the top of my stool. All right, so technically I don't need those anymore. I'm going to go ahead and temporarily hide that just so I don't see it. I'm going to say Control H, and I'm just going to keep Control H, just keep this section. Next up, I know my stool should be 50 millimeters tall. So I'm going to go ahead and say from there, drawing a downwards that is 500 millimeters or 50 centimeters. That's about the average height for a stool. And I'm going to go ahead and from that point outwards, draw a line from here that goes outwards at an angle of 22.5. My ortho is currently set to 22.5. I'm going to draw a line out from there downwards to approximately the 500 I measured down. So that would be the leg of my stool. And this guy, I'm going to go ahead and make that about, let's make it 80 millimeters from here to there. And I'm going to go ahead and link up with that line over there. So this should be the leg of my stool. Now I have a suspicion this guy's going to go out a little bit too wide for my liking. Let's just see in relation. Now that's going to end up being massive. My ortho setting of 22.5 is going to go a little bit too wide. So I'm just going to draw a line from that down to there halfway. And I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to draw a line from here to here and half that. So in my mid, I'm going to mark the mid on that line, grab these two and that guy, select their points and move them in from that point to this point. There we go. I think that's going to be a more aesthetically pleasing stool. I didn't want my base to be too wide. Now I am very much winging this based on visual aesthetics. So I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that I move these around a little bit, as long as we are a little bit wider and we are, if I use my horizontal measurements from there to there, we are 100 millimeters wider than the top of our stool. So our base should be plenty stable to support that. Now, I did go ahead and mess up just a teensy little bit over here. I'm going to hide these guys so you can see what I messed up. I did have my snaps turned on, so these guys aren't exactly level. Now there's a nice handy tool to fix that. I'm going to go ahead and hide those. I'm selecting these guys. I'm selecting all of those. And I'm going to my transform section and say I want to transform and align horizontal centers. And that allows me to align everything perfectly so that it is now a nice flat piece. I'm going to go ahead and join those, and that'll form my leg section. And the last thing I need to do is I need to create a second level or second layer brace for this leg. Otherwise it's going to be very floppy. So what I want to do is I want to mark a point from here outwards. So that's my center point in the middle of my build plane. And I'm going to go ahead and drag that line down to approximately visually halfway. It doesn't have to be super precise. Approximately visually halfway. And that's when I'm going to be adding my brace. So what I want to do now is I want to draw a line in from, I guess we could just use our mid snap too. So if we use our mid snap and draw in 25 millimeters that way, down 19 millimeters, because again, that's the thickness of our wood, and then out this way. Go ahead and trim that guy off, trim here, so trim there and there. And now I know that my brace section needs to be approximately this wide. And I can figure out exactly how wide that is by using my measuring tools from, I'm going to draw a line from that center down there to there. And I'm going to use my, let's maximize this window so you can see clearly. I'm going to go ahead and say measure my horizontal dimension from there to there. And that gives me 196.9 millimeters. So I know that's how big the circle should be. So I'm just going to round that up to 198. So it'll overlap just a teensy little bit over there. So I'm going to go ahead and say draw a circle. Draw a circle in my top viewport, which is 198. And I can grab that circle. Oh, no, that was a diameter of 198. I need a radius of 198. So I'm going to go ahead and say circle center to radius. From that end, I'm going to use radius of 198. And I can now bring that guy down until it's in contact there. 2 down. So it'll overlap just a teensy little bit over there, and I'm happy with that. Now I need to draw a slot on the inside of this guy and make sure that I can slot into that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to have a slot over here that is 19 millimeters thick to there. And I'm going to draw outwards that way. I'm just going to move this guy down, move. Half of 19 would be 9.5. 9.5. I'm spectacularly bad at math, so I had to pause there for a second and think about it. All right, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and join these two. I'm going to say join. And I need to move this slot in because right now it's in line with this guy. And I want to have a little bit of a slot into that. I want to go ahead and say, I want to move in that way. Let's do 10 millimeters that way. All right, so that should provide a slot for this guy to chip into in that circle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip that to the opposite side. I'm going to go ahead and say mirror inwards like that. And I want to be able to cut the inside of that guy out as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to draw a circle from there in to approximately there. That should give me my brace that I need to be able to do that. Now I'm going to move this guy down to in line with those two, so I can use my trim function. I'm going to select this and say I want to trim you and you. Let me just pause for there for a second now. Should do the trick. Oh no, actually I'm way off with this. I actually want to keep this guy in line with what was going on there. There we go. That should do perfectly. So that'll slot in there. This guy will slide in flush to where this joint happens. I'm going to go ahead and select that and say polar array this guy, polar array around that center. And I want to have 3 of those items. That'll do the trick. And I'm going to go ahead and say select this and this and this. Maximize this so you can see what's going on. Select all of those and I'm going to say trim there, 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 and there, and that last section there. And now I can go ahead and join those guys. So that gives me a joint that'll match up exactly with this guy. And I'm going to select the outline curve and that guy and say join. And now the last step is just to digitally assemble this so you can see what we have done. I'm going to go ahead and say select you and you, that outside curve, and extrude upwards 19 millimeters to there. I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to say extrude as well, 19 millimeters that way. And I'm just going to move it down, move 9.5 to get it centered in the slot we just created. So that allows us to have this piece have a cutout, but still have plenty of body here to be strong. And this guy has a cutout so that we recess this piece into it. All right. The final step is just to grab this guy and say we want to polar array. Polar array around that center, we want 3 objects in total. And we can bring back the top of our seat by typing in show or clicking on the light bulb icon up there. And that gives us our chair or our stool. So this guy acts to stabilize the legs to make the whole thing stronger. And the legs slot into our top section up there. And we cover those joints up here with a simple aesthetic piece. And that strengthens the top of our joint as well. All right. So that is designing a simple flat pack stool that can disassemble or reassemble out of 19 millimeter wood. Thank you.